Greetings, friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Let's Get Gritty podcast. I am super excited to be here with you guys today. It has been a phenomenal day. I hope that you've enjoyed yourself. I hope that you've been gritty and I hope that you're getting things done. Let's make it happen. Why not? Right? I've had a great day today. My son graduated fifth grade, so I want to give him a shout out on this show today. And I've got some wonderful people celebrating birthdays. Happy birthday to all of you out there that are celebrating birthdays in this month and so on. But long story short, I want to get down to the show. But before I do, let me make some announcements first, and then we will dive into this amazing content. So first things first, the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White will be featured on Swain Girl Media channel, hosted by Precious Swain. On Fire Stick, and there's more details to come. Thank you so much for that opportunity, Precious. Also, I know some of you are asking, how can you follow up with me? There's my social media information, so feel free to follow me. My Facebook is Miss India White. LinkedIn is The India White. Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indie238, and my YouTube channel is India White 123. So let's go ahead and follow each other. Let's connect. Many of you have been doing that, and I'm super excited for the partnerships to come and the work, the different projects that we'll have taking place. So also, check out the website. There's always something new, whether it's a blog. I hope you guys are really checking out my blog section, whether it's a blog or if there's like a book or a course, or if you want to schedule me for your next speaking engagement or your next event, reach out to me. You can go there. And also, you can send me an email if you're wanting to be a part of this show or if you're wanting to connect. My email is scrolling down at the bottom. It's india.white.123@gmail.com. So with that said, we are going to get to the nitty gritty of the show. I'm super excited about this topic because this topic is close to my heart. So I had a really neat opportunity to visit a fantastic former principal of mine who I think is the best principal ever. And just hands down, he understands education. He understands students. But in particular, he really worked with at-risk students or students that were on the verge of dropping out. And as we know, statistics are showing that you have about 2 million students dropping out of school every year in the United States. So this is a huge concern. And so when I worked with this principal, he just was very optimistic and always had a heart for these children. And so just thinking about everything, I said, you know what, I'm going to come on here and talk with you guys about the nitty gritty on how we can motivate at-risk students. So today's show is going to be on tips for motivating at-risk students. So when I think of at-risk, I think of students that, they might be, transient students that, homeless, or students that, might come from a lower socioeconomic status, students that are dealing with trauma and abuse, students that are dealing with some type of academic setback where they're not necessarily able to perform at the proficiency of their peers, students that are at risk, those that are, at risk of falling through the cracks, as we say in the world of education. So how do we help at-risk students? Well, I am here today to give you guys tips. Feel free to share this out to every principal, teacher, student, family, so that we can help our communities stay strong and help our students to continue to excel, because our number one goal in education is to close the achievement gap. So let's talk about it. First things first, I'm going to talk about the first tip. Tip 1, when you are trying to motivate a student, you have to first learn how to teach them the growth mindset. Now, if you are not familiar with the work of Dr. Carol Dweck with growth mindset, please take a moment sometime throughout your life to really study that, look through that, understand what she was saying about growth mindset, how that works. And when we're talking about growth mindset, usually you're talking about there's a fixed mindset and then there's a growth mindset. So fixed mindset, you're saying, oh, it's just how it's always been. It's not going to get any better. I don't know what to tell you. Just accept it. You made your bed, lay in it, kind of a mentality. But then a growth mindset says, well, it might have always been this way, but what if? A growth mindset, it challenges you to go beyond the status quo, to go beyond what's always been that way, go beyond the norm, and to say, what if? It causes that innovation. It causes you to explore. And when you're dealing with a student with a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, It's very interesting because students with a fixed mindset, they'll say, I've never been good in math. I've never been good in school. I don't care. Nobody in my family really did that well. So, who am I? But when you go and you retrain a child to embrace a growth mindset, you kind of put nuggets in their mind where you say, why not you? Why can't you be first? Well, have you tried another way? What about plan B? What about plan C? And you really kind of cultivate this motivation in a student to go beyond their fears and to actually take a risk and to go beyond what has always worked, because what's always worked sometimes isn't necessarily working for their situation. So being able to encourage them to take up a growth mindset is key when you're trying to motivate at-risk students. There's so much more to talk about. So let's get into it. Let's talk about more of what Dweck said. So Dr. Dweck, she says that students with a growth mindset are more likely to persevere and develop grit. So again, students with a growth mindset are more likely to persevere and develop grit. This is imperative because sometimes we think, oh, well, that kid, they're just not going to turn it around. But we as leaders, we as family members, we as the caretakers, the loved ones of these students who are in a volatile, vulnerable situation, if anyone needs to embrace a growth mindset, it should be the adults in the room. So when a student does come to you with, maybe they're just done and they've just checked out on, education, or they've checked out on their career path, it's your responsibility as an adult to say, you know what? I need to start putting in nuggets of hope, optimism, to let this child know that it's not over. They have all these years, seeing if everything goes right ahead of them to live. So why not help them to develop grit and persevere by establishing a growth mindset? And so there are so many things that you can do. You can just do really positive I can statements and do a little chart with your students when, like if you're teaching children with that are at risk, you could do a chart with these students where you find out, okay, what are your fixed mindset? Like, what are your absolutes? You're like, okay, I know there's just no hope here. And then what can we do to change that? And you can guide that child and kind of scaffold them through that so that they know that there is still hope. So let's keep going. We're now going to talk about the second tip. So the second tip I have for you is to set realistic goals with your learners. So the reason why so many students will say, oh, it just can't happen, I just can't do that, is because they're striving for just some goals that just they're way kind of time stretched out, like way beyond, or they just don't make sense. So for instance, if a child, if they're really aspiring to be say a rocket scientist or a physician or something, but they are not, they have not prepared themselves to get into those spaces. It's how you present that opportunity that counts. So to say to a child that say they have like a GPA that's lower, that's maybe below average GPA, and this child is trying to get into Harvard, okay? You might want to have a conversation with that child and say, chances of you getting accepted to Harvard with, say, a 1.4 GPA, and you're in high school, right, and you're a senior, chances of you getting accepted to Harvard are not as great as they would be as if you got accepted into a community college first. So when I used to have students in education that would come to me, especially when I was in administration, and they would say, hey, Ms. White, I want to get into University of Florida. I want to get into University of Georgia. I want to get into wherever. And I saw the truth. They scored a level 2 on an exam. They had a 1.4, and their situation was difficult. But that doesn't mean that it was impossible. It was just difficult. So what I would tell them is, listen, there's a path out. There's a path towards success. So I would say, listen, you might not have made the cut because the GPA requirements of this college is blank. And so you're coming, with this GPA, which does not meet the cut. However, you can enroll into a community college in that area. And if you do well in that community college, you can transfer into the university and get the same degree as all the other students that started at that public university or that private university at the beginning of their college, journey. So I tell students that, and then of course, if the student's like, okay, I don't have any money, I don't have any, whatever, so I'm just not going to try. And so they don't have any motivation because they feel like it's just hopeless. Then I lead them down the route of scholarships. I reach out to people in the community. I tell them about, there's a work study options on college campuses. So all hope is not gone. Don't shoot yourself in the foot because it looks like it's an absolute impossibility. Anything can be worked through if you just give it a shot. And so that is the biggest thing, is how are we packaging these goals for our students? Setting realistic goals is key. Doesn't mean that you have to completely sabotage or just terminate the goal that they have. There might be a way through it, but it might not be the direct route that they had hoped for. So being able to say, okay, let's try this route to get to that goal. And if that doesn't work, then can you come to the table with maybe 2 or 3 more goals so that we can also pursue those avenues as well. So that's some advice for you when you're trying to help motivate at-risk students in dealing with goals. Now, let's keep going because this is definitely a very imperative topic for, we've got students graduating, students finishing up their classes. So we've got to help these students to kind of just go beyond. Also, when you're setting goals, and Dr. Duckworth says that when you're setting stretch goals, it gives students a clear target to work towards for their life. So if you're preparing students for college and career readiness, it is imperative that you're setting goals where they can stretch into it. So if they can't stretch all the way into it and it's beyond, then that means you have to bring them back to where it's realistic and it makes sense. It's something that they can really navigate through in the moment and beyond. So we always say, okay, look at where would you be 3 years from now? Where are you going to be 5 years from now? Where are you going to be 10 years from now? So setting a goal for a child is something that you definitely want to make sure that they can reach it within those few years. So if it's that community college talk, or if they're at the university, what goals do they have? Are they trying to double major and work full time? Like, what are they trying to do? So helping those children as well to balance out the load and to balance out the reality of taking many courses, academic courses. I remember when I had first enrolled at the University of Florida to major in math. And I want to say the credit hours that you're supposed to take, it was like 12 hours, right? I want to say I took 16 hours. And I was so stressed that first year. And I remember speaking with mentors and saying, oh yeah, I'm taking this. I'm taking Calc 2, Calc 3, this, that. And I was just piling everything on because I was so excited about the opportunity. But I didn't realize that it was not realistic. So I did have to do some, arrangements and fix it to where I could actually survive in college and that I wasn't breaking down and oppressed with the workload of the academics that were ahead of me. And so I think even when you're dealing with students that are overly ambitious, helping them to set realistic goals as well, so that they don't put too much on their plate and then they burn out and then they just don't achieve anything. So yeah, we just got to continue to watch our students carefully as we're working with them and setting their goals. Now, the next tip. All right, so we're going to provide feedback and support for all learners. So this is key, because when a student is like, oh, I just can't do it. The reason why is because in their mind, they have judged themselves so harshly, like, okay, I failed that test. The last quiz, I got a C on. I missed 2 or 3 homework assignments. And then what she's teaching, what he's teaching today is just totally over my head. I can't do it. So when you're dealing with a student that is at risk, it is imperative that you provide an ample amount of support for these children. It is not enough to assume that just going to them once and saying, you've got this. See, you did okay on that problem. You'll be fine. No, revisit, because these students, some of them sometimes they don't have support at home. Sometimes all the support they got was from you. Maybe when they go home, they're not really into the homework like that. Or maybe they don't have a textbook. Maybe they don't have someone at the home that can really kind of pull out the academics and help walk them through algebra, or walk them through whatever the courses that they're taking. Maybe, they do have a parent that is very successful, but maybe they just haven't taken that level of math or in a long, long time. So they don't remember some of that, or that science class, So it's imperative that you do what you can as an educator and as a leader to provide feedback and support, and be specific in that feedback and support. So it's not enough just to say, oh, you got to keep going. Like, be specific about, why are you telling me, oh, you've got this? Why? Tell me, show me evidence. Is it the effort? Is it my attitude, my approach towards it? Is it how I performed in that last assessment? Is it on how I interacted this morning on, and discourse with the classmates? What is it? So being specific about providing feedback and support for students is key. Okay. And then also that support piece, that can be moral support, emotional support. That can be just, a nice smile for the student, calling families and updating the families and letting them know, okay, this is what's going on. And this is how we are, working together in a plan to help, continue to support this child as they're working through their progress. So support looks different for each child as well. So being very, knowing your student and knowing their family dynamic and knowing what their situation is, support will vary. Some students might need more hands-on. I remember, during COVID, we had a rock star teacher who he was actually going to the homes, driving to the homes, dropping off worksheets and math books because the students didn't have it. So, shout out to him for doing that, because he wanted to make sure the students had the appropriate amount of support that they needed to be successful in his class. So let's keep going. The next tip that I have for you is to emphasize effort and persistence. So why would you want to emphasize effort? Because, to be honest, when students are motivated and they're trying to cultivate grit and they're trying to really kind of harness in that grit to remain motivated, you have to emphasize effort, because if not, if that effort is affected in a negative way, it's going to affect their passion, which is going to affect the grit, which is going to affect their ability to persist. They will stop short because they lost passion, they lost motivation because they stopped putting in the effort. So this is why it's imperative to motivate them, to say, keep going, you're doing fabulous. And wow, I see what you've done. I see your hard work. I see your effort. Wow, look at this. Take their paper, pick it up, make a big deal out of it. Make a big deal out of it. Show them off to their classmates. Show them off to other teachers. Show them off to their community, to their parents or guardians, so that they understand that you really, really did acknowledge it and that it really was a big deal. And then, of course, with persistence, emphasizing persistence, this is so imperative, because like, if you don't emphasize persistence, then students might say, well, okay, I've done all this work, I've persisted, done, and there's no reward, or nobody cares, or it just didn't matter. And it just gets recycled through with everything else. So whenever you have that situation, it's so imperative that you do what you can to overemphasize the importance of students persisting through assignments on time, and letting them know that you appreciate them being responsible and that you are proud of them. There is nothing wrong with loving students and telling them that you are proud of them. We need more of that. We need to build the morale of our students nationwide. Our students need to know that we really are advocating for them, because that's what counts. And so, and shout out to the principal today that said that at my son's graduation ceremony, and she told the kids, I am proud of all of you. And it was like, they need to hear that. So, so many times students are already dealing with anxiety, right? They're dealing with anxiety from school. They're dealing with math anxiety. They're dealing with social anxiety. Sometimes students, they don't even want to express themselves because they feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get laughed at, mocked at, or it's not going to be good enough. Or somebody is going to come and say something better. And so they already have like all this on top of them. And so then, when they do perform, if we miss that opportunity to kind of reassure them that they're on track and that we're proud of them and that we see their progress, that can really kind of cause a negative effect to where it kind of backfires and students feel like, oh, well, I did all that. I overcame all this pressure, did this on this assignment, and then I got nothing from it. So then what happens? Sometimes there's apathy. They grow avoidant. They stop caring, all because we didn't do a double take and check to see that that child really felt appreciated and knew that we cared and that they did a great job through persisting through those assignments. So we've got to definitely be careful and make sure that we're making an intentional effort as teachers and leaders to emphasize effort and persistence. Speaking along with that, I looked at some researchers here. Heimovitz and Dweck, they said that students use effort to overcome difficulties, right? And they attribute their poor performances to a lack of effort rather than ability. Very interesting, because what they're saying here is, yeah, I might even have the ability to do it, but if I don't care about it, if I don't put in the effort, I'm not going to do it, right? So look, it's imperative that we emphasize effort, because if not, then students, they contribute a poor performance to a lack of effort. Now, that is the key. Why are students lacking effort? That is the big elephant in the room. What is the reason why that student decided not to give their entire effort, their best effort into an assignment? Were they offended? Do they not have a good relationship with their teacher? Are they going through something personally? Why are they not motivated? What has affected their effort? And I'm telling you, as you continue to, build relationships with students and get to know those students, and you prepare assignments to where students can feel like they can win and they feel like their efforts matter, we'll start seeing less of this poor performance taking place with our students. Now, let's keep going. With that said, tip 5, you want to celebrate successes, okay? So a part of being able to focus on their effort is to say, I'm celebrating you. You did a fantastic job. Look, wow, you did it. Woohoo! Make a big deal. What is wrong with making a big deal about a student's success? Nothing. Let's do it. Do it more. Okay, when I was in the classroom, I think I was overboard when it came down to compliments and praises and good jobs and smiley faces on the corner of the papers. Listen, this was not just grades like middle school. This was high school. These seniors, algebra 2, they would take a test or a quiz, and if they did great, -0, -2, whatever, good job, smiley face, gave them my fake money. I had a money system. They would get $100 or $80, whatever that was, and that worked. But, it was so interesting because I remembered sometimes educators, other colleagues of mine would say, India, don't you think that's a little too much? Hoomrah, you got going on? No. And it worked. My kids loved it. And they looked for that. They looked for the words, good job, exclamation mark, smiley face, over sometimes the fake $60 that was a part of our money system, which was super sweet too. But I say that because sometimes we underestimate the power of a compliment, the power of uplifting a student and saying, you're fabulous. You did a fantastic job. You know what? Have you ever thought, what if you are the only person that is celebrating that child's success? And then what if they do fantastic? And then you underestimate your influence as a leader, as a caring leader, and then you miss out on that opportunity. What are they going home to? How are they going to go forward? This is why we are needed. This is why educators are needed and principals are needed, superintendents. This is why leaders are needed and professors. Everyone is needed to celebrate the success of students. Because students, listen, sometimes students enroll into school at the beginning of the year with so much anxiety and fear, and then you're asking them to actually perform. And then unfortunately, sometimes students will do work, and then if they don't get a certain grade, they're getting disciplined at home. Sometimes students are getting a beating because they didn't get that 90%. Sometimes students are getting yelled at. Sometimes the students are working on their homework. Their parent or their guardian, who is just frustrated, might come home and start, just yelling and being upset because that child is not performing. So then when they get to the class and then they do well and they don't get that praise, it really kind of messes up their OODA loop, because they're like, wait, I'm not getting it really. Maybe I'm not getting it as much as I wish I could get it at home. And then I'm not getting it in the class. So then they feel lost inside, right? Unfortunately, when you're dealing with at-risk students, this is more of a realistic situation. So we have to definitely kind of just be mindful of how can we really celebrate a child who has already come to the space, sometimes emotionally broken, sometimes mentally disturbed, because they've gone through so much trauma, with just trying to learn and trying to show that they're giving their best effort. So I want to encourage you to continue to celebrate success of students and to help them, because they need you. So let's go to the next tip with that point. The next tip I want to talk to you guys about is building trust with students as they succeed. So, and this is wonderful because it all comes together. I remember the children. Oh my goodness. I remember one student who came to my class, and he said to me, yo, Miss White, I know you heard about me. I'm the bad student on this campus. I always get in trouble. I always get referrals. And I'm just a troublemaker. So what are you going to do about that? And I just kind of told him, okay, well, nice to meet you. I didn't know that, but thanks for letting me know. And I told him, I said, and he's like, oh, I'm sure so-and-so told you about me. I'm sure so-and-so, I'm sure you're going to read about me. And so I told him, I said, I'll make sure to create my own opinion and we'll start fresh. And so that's what we did. So I didn't go back and read, listen teachers, listen educators, listen principals. I didn't go back and read about his history from second grade in kindergarten when he was in ninth grade. I had to take him for who he was today and the relationship that we were building that day. And that's exactly what I did. And we built this relationship. A beautiful kid. He had like a level 2, level 1 on the state assessment at the time. And he was very nervous. But I can tell you one thing. He continued coming to school. He wasn't getting any more referrals, write-ups, all this. All that went away. We built trust. I would visit him at his sports events, let him know I was proud of him. Okay? Kept in touch with the family. Did what I could to be an example. I spent time with him to tutor him whenever he needed it. And as a result, he did pass that state assessment. And he turned his life around. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful success story. And I love what I do, because I love to see those kids go through and just shine and be great, because they deserve it. They deserve to be in that space of success. And we have to do what we can to build trust with students as they succeed. And one thing that worked with that child is many compliments. And then it was so funny because I remember, him saying something like, I never got a B in math. I never got an A in math, but then when he saw like, oh my, things are changing for the good. Like I actually might be able to succeed. And then I would hold him to it. Listen, you did fabulous, but now I need you to keep it. You got to do that. Nobody can do that for you. You've got to keep it up. And we held him accountable and he did fabulous. And so, those are some things that we want to do as we are helping to build trust with students as they succeed. So let's keep going and let's talk about the next tip for motivating at-risk students. So the next tip 7, you want to make success for the lives of these students relevant. I'm going to say that again. You want to make success for their lives relevant. See, the problem is so many times we'll come to our students and say, listen, you just need to succeed. You need to just do this. But the students, maybe they don't know what success looks like. Have you ever thought sometimes students in particular communities, they don't have role models of success around them. And believe it or not, students are their role model. Their role models are usually who's around them already. And unfortunately, sometimes in particular communities, role models really aren't people that are aspiring to contribute to society in a way that is acceptable, if that makes sense. So, what do you do in a situation like that? You've got to go back to the goal setting, help these children to establish goals. When you're talking to a child, for instance, and you ask an at risk learner, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know. Okay. What are you good at? I don't know. Maybe football. Okay. What else do you want to do besides football? Nothing really. Football is it. Okay. All right. Well, have you thought of a college? No. Okay. So when you're in a situation like that, which many of us have dealt with, right? What you want to do is you definitely want to make sure that you are helping these students to create a path. So you might say, like for instance, the students would say to me, especially my seniors, "Hey, what do you want to be?" I don't know. Maybe football. Okay. Are you on the team? Yes. Okay. Are you already going to college? No. Okay. What colleges? This is where I would come in. What colleges would you mind going to, or would you want to go to? Do you want to stay, in the state? Do you want to move out of state? Where do you want to go? And then I would tell them, okay, come back to me tomorrow, 3 colleges. And then I would be realistic with these children. Okay, your GPA is here. This college wants this, right? Well, have you thought of the community college? Have you thought of trying to maybe enroll in the Army? If you can't make any of the cuts, enroll in the Army and then go to college that way. And then maybe so those are some things that you can do. So when the students come to you and they're saying, I want to play football and they don't have any path, just outline for them 2 or 3 ways to make it happen. And then if football might not be the best option for them and they're like stuck on football, throw out other ideas. Start telling them, what about basketball, or what about business? What about being a lawyer? What about you like working with cars? What about owning a car shop or being a mechanic and then being a director or a manager? Have you thought of being an artist? Have you thought of working in geology? Like what else do you like to do? And then of course having these conversations over the next few weeks with these students to kind of motivate them to say, okay, this is what success looks like for your life. It doesn't make it wrong just because it might not be the path for your peer's life over here. Because for your life, this is what fits. And that is key. And I think that is where many at-risk students, unfortunately, have been disappointed because they've not been guided through a path for their life. And sometimes these children are dealing with different situations mentally and emotionally to where they might not respond in a way that they are compliant. And so then that makes it even more difficult, right? When you're dealing with students as to, okay, well, how do I get it across to this child that this is what they need to do? And that's why it's going to take patience in relationship building. As you also, maybe when you're talking to them, you can help them navigate, write down those plans, and then hold them accountable throughout the school year so that they can become successful in achieving those goals. And then I want to now talk about the next tip that I have for you guys. And this tip is to convince your students that their achievements matter. Again, convince your students that their achievements matter, because that is one of the issues. Many times students feel like it doesn't matter if I do this because nothing good's going to come to me. I don't have anything to look forward to. And I do hear the argument of people that say you don't need extrinsic motivation, just intrinsic. The goal is to get students to a place where they're intrinsically motivated. I hear you and I respect that. But I'm telling you, when you're dealing with students that are at risk, that extrinsic motivation is a big piece. Rewarding them with something, a gift card to, a Amazon or I don't know. Sometimes people used to get, gift card and get them a lunch if they did something good at a fast food restaurant or something. I don't know. Coming up with a system on campus so they can get tangibles, something, an award. They can get something to let them know that they did a phenomenal job when they were achieving. And then, of course, you can wean them off of that. But starting out with those extrinsic rewards really did work for at-risk students. And that's why I shout out all the schools that are doing PBIS systems across the nation and restorative practice systems as well. That is phenomenal. So definitely continue to convince your students that their achievements matter so that they don't feel that they're just doing everything and they're not getting anything for it. And so with that, I did find some research here from sciencedirect.com. They said supporting positive motivational patterns in an achievement context is relevant to a student's academic success. Again, supporting motivational patterns in an achievement context is relevant to a student's academic success. So that is key. If you're trying to keep a pattern of remaining motivated and a pattern of success, you've got to convince them that their achievements matter. So, and I can tell a little bit about myself of having a wonderful teacher that kind of knew my situation and would not let me give up, even though I was an at-risk youth myself. And that teacher would continue to let me know, listen, you're doing a great job in this class, in her math class. You're doing a great job in this class. And, I don't want to see you slacking and She didn't feel sorry for my situation. She didn't, she didn't pity me to the point of failure. She supported me and she scaffolded me towards success. She continued to set goals and she continued to let me know that everything that I was doing and accomplishing in her class mattered. And that was what was able to help me get through that time period of trauma and hurt and uncertainty and darkness, and to really kind of just launch out, because I had a phenomenal community of support there, but also that teacher who actually allowed me to know that, my achievements did matter, even though I was going through craziness. So with that said, in conclusion, not all hope is lost for at-risk learners. Life can change overnight for the good for all students. It can change for them. And guess what? You might be the catalyst for helping that change take place. So with that said, thanks so much, guys, for joining me today on the Let's Get Gritty podcast. I'm super excited. Today we were talking about motivating at-risk students. And I want to just leave you again with my podcast. It's going to be featured on Swing Girl Media Channel. It's going to be on different stations, whatever. So just stay tuned there. My Facebook, which you can see in the back of me, but I also have it here. Miss India White is Facebook. LinkedIn is The India White. Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. My math Twitter is iWhiteBIL. Instagram is Indie238. And my YouTube channel is India White123. So feel free to join me on those things. And then, of course, if you want to be a part of the Let's Get Gritty podcast, please send me an email of your photo and bio to india.white.123@gmail.com so we can get you scheduled. And then check out my website, www.india-white.com for, blogs, books, or to schedule me for your next event. So with that said, take care, keep it gritty, continue to do an amazing job with students.